Okay, so today I'm going to talk about data quality and volunteer postings. Obviously, we spend a lot of time talking about the impact of data quality in Community Information Center records, and I figured that it was about time to actually do one for volunteer opportunities. Sorry, I have a question. I'm just going to pause for one moment. Okay. So this is what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to go through the fields in the volunteer software and which ones are more or less important for searching and more or less important for someone selecting a volunteer opportunity so that you know where to be focusing your efforts. I'm going to show you how to use various searches to identify issues in those fields so that you can try and correct them. I'm going to talk about when to modify your view settings to make sure that your view settings and your actual data work together harmoniously. If you have multiple views in your database, I'm going to talk about how you make sure that all your records are in the right place. And then I'm going to talk about how you get posting agencies or try and convince posting agencies to improve the quality of the data that they're submitting to you. Does anyone have any questions about what I'm covering? Okay. So first of all, let's talk about how people find opportunities in the first place. It's a lot different than the way that people find records in the community information software, where we know that almost 90% of people who find a community information record find it from Google, and that they go directly from Google to the record that they want. That isn't really the way that the volunteer software works. And so the search function in the volunteer software is actually far more important than it is in the community information side, because generally speaking, people are seeking out volunteer opportunities in their community. They really only know, I want to find a volunteer opportunity in my community, and they might have a general sense of what they want to do. But it isn't like the community information software that they're looking for a specific kind of thing where they could put a keyword in Google and find that position. And so the importance of having your records be properly searchable is actually much higher in the volunteer opportunity software than it is, say, on the community information side of CIOC. Unfortunately, I think that there isn't enough emphasis on making sure that that works on the volunteer opportunity side, and that's why I'm having a session today. So one of the first things that everybody should do is go and look at what search settings you have enabled in your view. I'm going to go through quickly today how you can turn on and off various view settings to say that certain kinds of searches are available or not available to your either to your staff or to the public. You need to review in your volunteer profiles the search terms that people are trying to use to be notified of new positions. I'll be demonstrating that today as well. You need to identify special needs in communities in your area that you are trying to target. So this has nothing to do with CIOC. This is about the needs that you identify in your own community and the volunteers that are searching in your area, and try and make sure that you're addressing those specific needs. So it might be that you have a lot of immigrant population coming in and you really need to highlight positions that are appropriate for new Canadians. It might be that you have a lot of people who are having trouble finding appropriate positions for court-ordered service hours. It really depends on what you're identifying is the big requirement in your area so that you can start to target those needs. And that's not about software, that's about your specific community. Obviously, for those that are full volunteer centers, you're having interactions with your potential volunteers, hopefully. And so speaking to them about the kinds of positions they're looking for and how they want to look is a good way to identify the most important kinds of searches that you need to ensure are working to their best. And then you need to do some basics to make sure that your site is easy to use and easily found by search engines. And that's things like making sure you're mobile first, meaning it works perfectly on a phone, We know that up to 60% of traffic is coming from mobile devices. So during the day across CIOC, we get about 40% is mobile traffic, and in the evenings it goes up to 60%. And I believe it's even higher on the volunteer software. So if your site is not wonderful on a phone, not just passable, but wonderful, then you are alienating your audience because the majority of them are visiting your site on a phone. Having it be secure and tidy are both important. So secure both gives you better search engine rankings and actually ensures the integrity of the information that your volunteers are submitting. Having it be tidy and uncluttered makes it easier for those potential volunteers to find their position, and also just gives you a more professional look. And what I mean by timely is by keeping your front page and sort of additional content up to date and constantly changing, you're both going to get better ranking and search results, and you're also going to make it clear to a potential volunteer that you are active and involved, that this is not a stale dead site, that this is an actively maintained site that is up to date, and that's very encouraging for someone who wants to find a current position. Any questions about these before I go and actually show you in the software about those first two? Feel free to interrupt me either in the chat, or this is a meeting style, so that means that you should all be able to unmute yourself if you wish to speak. If you have any trouble, just use the chat. Okay, so let's quickly go in and look at the view setup. I'm going to pick a default public view here. So I'm going to scroll down to the actual search area. So you'll see in your view setup there's a section called searching. So this is where you will find the types of searches that you have enabled for your public or staff site. They work the same way. Public, the only ones you care about are basic search and step-by-step search, because the public does not have access to advanced search. Okay? So in your basic search, it's really critical that you have only enabled searches that you know are going to retrieve accurate results. And I'm going to show you a little bit later how to actually determine whether you're getting results from each of these. And the best practice, if you're not, is going to be to turn them off until you actually have data that supports those kinds of searches. So although the temptation is obviously to give everybody access to all of the searches they could possibly do, this is actually not a good idea because it's very possible that you are misleading them into thinking that there are not positions available if you make a search available that doesn't give good results because the data behind it is not good. I'm going to give some specific recommendations later about which ones are most used, but for now I just wanted to show you this is where the setup area is, and if you need to turn off specific things, this is where you do it. I'll go into, if you want me to at the end, I'll go a little bit more into the customizing your search results and all of that stuff. The next thing I wanted to show you was how to review your volunteer profiles to get information about what people are looking for. So assuming that you've enabled volunteer profiles in your database, which I believe almost everybody, if not everybody, has done, you'll start to get some very good statistics about what it is that people are looking for. So they have the opportunity to say they want to be notified of new positions that meet their search criteria when they sign up for a volunteer profile. And you have access to that information as long as they have consented to give you access to that information. So not only do you have statistics about how many people, which is what all of this is, way down at the bottom we have this criteria demographics section, and this is the one that's important. It's going to tell you for those that have elected to share the information with you, so keep that in mind, this is not everyone, this is a portion of people who have self-selected to tell you about what they're looking for. You can determine whether they are searching for a specific age group, which community they're looking in. Okay. Ooh, that's a lot of communities. And what their areas of interest are. This part is really important because the most popular categories are the ones that you need to focus your time on making sure that they are correctly applied. So if one of the most commonly searched things is youth services and you've forgotten to tag, or the person who submitted the opportunity hasn't informed you that they want to classify that position in that way, it's not going to come up in these searches. People who've been set up for automatic notification are never going to know that that opportunity exists. And in fact, the people who have volunteer profiles can come to rely on that automatic notification. They aren't visiting your website unless they get notified of a position. And so they're never going to find that in another way if you do not make sure that it is tagged appropriately. And the sooner you tag it, the better. So when people set up a volunteer profile, they can specify whether they want new or updated. They have options to kind of configure the kind of notifications they want to get. And so it's better to get the areas of interest correct at the moment that you create that record, because that's going to hit the most number of people on notifications, versus coming back after the fact and fixing or updating that record. You're going to get less notifications because people may not have picked that they want to be notified of updates. That actually will come into play a little bit later in the discussion, where I'm going to give you some tips about when to drop an existing opportunity and recreate it as a copy. There's some very good reasons why that is the right thing to do. So we'll come back to that. Does anyone have any questions about reviewing your demographics of your volunteer opportunities? It's pretty straightforward, I think. Okay. So how do you verify that you are search engine and user-friendly? So a lot of you I've been working with directly on making sure that you have mobile-friendly sites. But for anyone who needs a refresher or hasn't gone through that with me, the best way to determine whether you have a mobile-friendly site is to use one of the browser's features for doing responsive design. So I'll demonstrate quickly Firefox and Chrome. So in Firefox, I'm going to do Tools, Web Developer, Responsive Design View. And you can pick from the drop-down view. So there's a phone, for example, and I can see what this site is going to look like on a phone. Okay, so that's Firefox. In Chrome, it's called Developer Tools, and it's in a different location. So there's this funny little, I hope you can see it. It's far off on the upper right of the screen. More tools, Developer Tools. And there is a little, this may appear on your right-hand side. So if you don't see it at the bottom, don't worry. It often appears on the right instead. And there is a little, it looks like a tiny little phone. I'm sorry if my screen is too small. It's a teeny weeny little phone. And when you click on it, you're able to start selecting a model. So I can pick Apple iPad and see, what does this look like on the iPad? What does it look like when I tilt the iPad? And start to get a sense. So I can pick iPhone. Here's what it looks on an iPhone this way. Here's what it looks on an iPhone this way. And I can see whether this is, the site is appropriate for phones. And again, at least half of the people coming to your site are on a phone. If your site doesn't look great on a phone, you're alienating that audience, guaranteed. So now I'm going to talk about specific fields and when they matter and why they matter. So we're going to start with the big 7 fields that I know are the most used in order to find an opportunity based on the search capabilities that we have. Obviously, location is a primary one. Unless you're really tiny and your site only serves one very small area, location is going to be a big factor in how people are making a selection. So we keep our location in the number of positions field, which I know is misleading. The number that you put is not as relevant as making sure that those communities are selected. So I'm going to go into random opportunity locally, so I'm not messing up anyone's things. This is not Guelph, don't worry. This is just my local database. Okay. So depending on what you've got set up locally, this could be called numbers of position or areas of need, but fundamentally it's a tie between your community and the number of positions. Actually filling out the number, generally speaking, is not important. So you do not have to fill out a number next to the community. It's optional if you want to, but you do need to pick specific communities. It is not sufficient to just write something in the notes. If you write all of Halton region here, I'm going to zoom in so everyone can see. If you write all of Halton region, that does nothing for locating an opportunity. This is not helpful. This will not find anything. So you have to actually pick one of the predefined communities you have or type in the community you want and add it. If you have not picked the communities here and they don't appear in this table, that opportunity will not be found in a step-by-step search or any kind of search that uses community as one of the search criteria. I'm going to show you shortly how to confirm that every one of your positions has an appropriate community selected. That's, this is a critical field to have filled out. Areas of interest, I think this is relatively straightforward. So there are multiple ways that areas of interest come into play. It comes in through keyword. It comes in through a step-by-step search. If you do a step-by-step search or a student use search, if you browse by areas of interest, but also when you're viewing a specific opportunity, the areas of interest are linked, meaning if someone did come across a volunteer opportunity through Google or some other way, they may be led into other opportunities through the linking that's done within the record. So this is a critical one in terms of ensuring that people can find the records, is making sure that you have all the appropriate areas of interest applied. You want to focus your time on the ones that your volunteers are looking for, meaning the ones that they are ranking highest in their profiles are also the ones that you need to make sure are most consistently applied to your records. Commitment length. So traditionally, commitment length was not used for searching by the public, and so it's a frequently neglected field. People felt that it was relatively optional and it only was in some records or very few records. But that has changed significantly for a couple of reasons. One, many of you are contributing to the Find My Spark portal in Ontario, and many of you are also using some of the new search forms that include a duration as one of the search criteria. And so the ability to have this be optional information is over for many of you. If you're either participating in Find My Spark or you are using one of these search forms that has commitment length as part of the searching, you need to ensure that that data is complete in all of your records. And that is a multiple select field, meaning you can pick more than one value. If that position has, especially if they've done something where they are posting about multiple positions in the same, if they are posting about multiple positions in the same opportunity, which I know happens a lot because people don't want to do multiple postings, then you need to make sure that it's selected every possible value. So if they're posting, oh, we occasionally do special events, but we also have this ongoing thing where you require a larger commitment, you have to make sure that you pick off one-time special event and long-term because both apply. And if you don't select both, then it's not going to come up in one of those searches, and people are not going to find that as a potential opportunity for them. Suitable for is another one that in the last year I've been getting more and more requests from volunteer centers who have communities that they're trying to meet their needs. So whether that is the new Canadians or workplaces or court-ordered service hours or any of those special requirements that I talked about earlier, the need to have the ability to search on that information, I don't know if it's just increased lately or people's desire to search on it has increased. But again, this was something that people maybe didn't fill out all the time or only occasionally filled out. But as soon as you start making this something that people search on and regularly, it has to be filled out effectively for every single opportunity. And what's tricky about suitable for is a lot of people have one of the boxes that says anyone. I don't particularly encourage having a box that says anyone unless you plan to manually make sure that that you've reviewed every single opportunity and determine whether it's effective to put that checkbox in there. And the challenge of the anyone box is, does that mean that you're not going to check it off if there's, well, we can't allow people who don't pass a screening, so I shouldn't check off anyone? And does that mean that someone who just thinks right off the bat that, oh, anyone, that means that this is going to return everything and they're going to pick that? It's so misleading and so hard to get the right results that the use of anyone is dangerous. And if you have that as one of your values, I encourage you to turn it off or delete it. You can hide it if it's in your database, in a shared database, and you can't delete it, you can still hide it. That value is very, very misleading and dangerous and will give people unexpected results. It's very hard to know how to fill an opportunity out properly for that, and guaranteed the people who are using it to search are not all going to have the same interpretation of what suitable for anyone means. So with that caveat, there are a lot of values that are extremely useful for helping people to find an opportunity. Everyone in Ontario is using our open data values. Anyone outside of Ontario is welcome to do so. So I'm going to go right now to just to the open data information so I can show you where the list is. So this is, you can see anyone's in here, which I think is a bad idea. Other than the anyone, here's a potential list of suitable for that you may find useful in your database. But as soon as you add them, you need to go through and make sure that they're applied to all the records where it's appropriate. And that may mean following up with some of your posting agencies to see if their opportunities qualify. If you don't do that, if you add a new value but you don't go back and make sure that all of your existing older opportunities are classified with that new value, then the search results are going to be misleading and people are not going to find what they want. Suitable for can be an extremely useful search for the public, but only if the data behind it is complete. If I have a limited mobility and there may actually be 10 opportunities in my database that are perfect for that, but I've only checked it off in one, that person who's doing the searching thinking, oh, I found a way to search exactly for my condition and something that suits me, not understanding that they're missing out on a bunch of opportunities that would have worked for them because that data wasn't filled out correctly. So these can be wonderful and very helpful for volunteers, but only if they're complete. If they're incomplete, it becomes useless and in fact damaging, because people will think that that information doesn't exist or that opportunity does exist when it does exist and it's just not filled out correctly. There's a question here. So a very, very good question about the fact that the volunteer feedback form often doesn't have the checkboxes. That's an excellent question. So that is going to change. You lucky, lucky folks, we actually have a member who's funded that change. So that is going to change within the next month. And when someone views that feedback form, they're going to get the checkboxes, which is going to make your lives and the posting agency's lives significantly easier. So that is not going to be an issue anymore. Yay, I love giving good news. So what will happen is when they go to the feedback form, they're going to see exactly what you see on the update form. They're going to see all of those checkboxes. They're going to be able to add areas of interest the same way that you do. It's going to be exactly what you have on the feedback form. Any questions about that? I'm guessing within a month, hopefully less. Some of them I've already converted, so I think Suitable For I had already made a checklist, but the others are not yet. Organization name. So this one's obvious, so I'm not going to get into it, but picking consistent organization records to anchor your opportunities to is important here, meaning if you have a very large agency that has many programs, you need to consistently decide whether you are attaching your opportunities to the programs or to the parent agency. And I recommend that you always tie to the parent agency and not the individual programs. The reason is that when someone is viewing the opportunity and they see at the bottom more opportunities from this agency and you have linked it to the programs, that search is not going to work. If you link them all to the parent agency and not the individual programs that that agency runs, then you ensure that more opportunities from this agency always returns all the opportunities that that agency runs, no matter what program they're associated with. You can give information in the opportunity itself that it applies to a specific program, but don't do it by linking to the program record, would be my recommendation. Okay. Updated and created date. So this is more important than you might think. A lot of databases have what I would call ongoing opportunities. So they may have been posted 4 or 5 years ago, but that organization always has postings. They always have openings, and so it's not something that they post down. It's something that they have up all the time. You're doing that agency a disservice if you do not carefully update the dates and review that opportunity on a regular basis, because they will fall so far down in the search results and they will never appear on the what's new, and that means that their position is getting lost in a sea of other newer, more frequently updated positions. You need to pick an update schedule for any position that's ongoing like that, where they always want it, and the sooner it is, the more you'll be able to bump that position back up to the top. Even if all you do after 6 months is say you've updated it and don't change anything, that's going to push it back up to the top of what's new. It's going to make it so that when someone's reviewing the opportunity, they don't give it the side eye. I know when I've myself gone through looking at volunteer opportunities and I see a position that was posted 3 years ago, I think, well, they still need people, and I'm unsure. And my natural response is not to want to apply to that position if I think that could be filled 3 years ago and they don't need anybody anymore. So it's incredibly important that you regularly review all of the date fields in your record, the start date, the end date, the request date. If you know for certain that that agency is kind of renewing their request for you, maybe that's when they renew their membership with you because you're a volunteer center. Going in and putting the request date up to a new date on a regular basis is like giving them an advertising bump. Brings them up to the what's new. It means in the search results, certain search results display the request date. And if you have a nice new fresh date, the appeal to the potential volunteers is significantly higher. So don't just assume because you didn't bring the listing down that you're fine. That's not the case. Every opportunity has to be have its dates refreshed on a regular basis. And if you don't do that, that opportunity is dying because people will not trust it and it will not appear except at the very bottom of the list in search results. Don't just change the modified date, change the update date. And at least every so often, change the request date. If you have confirmation from the agency, yes, we want to renew this posting, don't just change the update date, change the request date. They've newly requested that you have that position, so update it in that way. Okay. Youth opportunities, obviously a huge part of doing the volunteer opportunity postings. So in Ontario, that may mean using the OSSD field. So for the high school diploma, obviously certain types of positions are not appropriate for that limited commitment. And so it's almost an opt-out, if you will. It gives people a way to indicate that their position is not suitable for the high school diploma component. So filling that out it is important if you've turned it on, keeping in mind you can turn the OSSD search off. You remember I showed you earlier that you have the ability to turn on and off various kinds of searching and things. You can actually turn off the OSSD component if you aren't filling it out. If you aren't collecting that as feedback from your posting agencies, turn that off as a search, because having it incomplete is worse than not having it. Age is more important, so encouraging reasonable age limitations on opportunities is important for people to be able to find something suitable. That doesn't mean that you have to fill out an age for every opportunity. If it's really effectively an open opportunity and age is unimportant, leaving ages blank is fine. That will imply that that opportunity is good for anyone. But if there are reasonable, effective age limitations, such as, say it's a family volunteer opportunity, I said it's suitable for families, but actually they only want 12 and up, it's important that that says 12 and up, because you don't want people coming bringing their 5-year-olds thinking this is a family volunteer opportunity, I can bring my whole family, if in effect they really only want older children to be participating. So again, really important to have that there, but you don't have to go crazy. If there's no realistic reason why that position needs to be limited by age, it's fine to leave it blank. So less often searched but somewhat important are going to be our duties and position titles. So those are used for keyword along with organization name. They're not tremendously effective for the public in searching compared to the other fields. They're more likely to be useful for you as a staff person, and in particular in identifying some of the data quality issues. Being able to keyword search on duties and position titles is important. But to be honest, this is not a high use thing that we would expect from the public. They're not likely to be searching by keyword in duties and position title. They might search for a specific organization name or an interest that they have, but it's less likely that they're going to be searching duties and position title, to be honest, compared to areas of interest or some other part of the opportunity. Got a big flag here saying don't use dates and times. So dates and times. We have a dates and time search, and I have a strong recommendation that everybody who hasn't already done so turn this off, because it's incredibly misleading. So all the dates and time search does is ensure that the opportunity matches at least one of the things that the volunteer has checked off. But there's no ability to distinguish between I can only volunteer on Wednesday afternoons and Wednesday afternoons is one of the times that's available. So if a position says it will do any weekday afternoon, and they've ticked off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and the volunteer comes in and they say Wednesday afternoon, does that mean that it should match because that's one of the possible times? But what if that had to be every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or it had to be Monday and Wednesday? That's probably in the notes of the dates and times, but it doesn't work for searching. The searching can't distinguish between it has to be Monday and Wednesday, and it can be either Monday or Wednesday. And so as a search tool, dates and times is lousy. And I encourage you to get rid of it. It's just an extra step for the volunteer to go through, and it really doesn't provide any quality search results. So to turn that off, go back here. Uncheck step-by-step dates and times. And I strongly, strongly encourage everybody to go and turn this off. If you really want it, it's up to you. But it's an extra step that I believe brings no quality at all to the results of the search. Once they get into the opportunity, they can see the actual text of dates and times and make an assessment about whether it's suitable. But as an actual ability to find an opportunity, the results are not good. The other thing that I would encourage you to turn off while you're here is the show counts of individuals needed on search step 1 page. So if you're doing the step-by-step search, the default is that it just shows the number of opportunities, the number of positions posted. And you recall earlier when we were looking at the areas of need, the location, you had the ability to specify specific numbers of people. But the reality is you're not going and making them update that every time they get an application, or ensuring that the count is always up to date. And therefore, posting that information is extremely misleading to the public and doesn't really provide them with any value. So I would encourage you to turn it off if you really like it because the numbers look good. That's up to you, but it doesn't provide any accuracy or benefit to the person doing the searching to see the number of individuals needed. If you have the number of individuals turned on, assuming it's, yeah, it looks like this. So obviously it looks really impressive. I think that's why people turn it on, because it gives nice, impressive numbers about how many individuals are needed, but it's likely not accurate because you don't know if any of those positions have been filled. Sometimes they'll put 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8 in every community, but really they only need 8, and it'll do 8 for each of the communities that they've put it in. So if there's 4, you're getting 32 individuals needed, not 8, unless they filled out the total. So misleading, potentially. If you want to turn it off, that's how you do it. Any questions so far? I know I'm cramming a lot of information here, so please feel free to interrupt me or post in the chat. There's a question about minimum age being a mandatory field. So I'm going to talk a little bit about required fields a little bit later. The reason why it isn't necessarily great to have minimum age be a required field is sometimes there isn't an effective minimum. So you could make it mandatory, but if there isn't really a practical age restriction, there isn't really any value in putting, 8 and up or something when it's not really I would hope that the posting agency, if there is really effectively a minimum, will put it in. But I'll talk a little bit about how required fields work in a bit. I will say that for the public, required fields are suggestions. And that's because you never want to not get a posting or not get feedback because someone doesn't know how to answer a question about a field. And when you force required fields on the public, you may get inaccurate information or they may just not submit because they can't fill something out. Whereas if you take what you can get and tell them the fields you want them to fill out, then hopefully they'll fill out everything you ask and you can follow up with them if needed, but you never get the situation where they're putting inaccurate information or just not submitting the form because they don't know how to fill some information out, which can be a real problem when you force required fields on the general public. Okay, so the fields that we use for searching are very different from the fields that the volunteer is going to use to choose the opportunity. So the ones I talked about before are important for how you identify potential opportunities to look at. But once you're looking at them, the fields that are important change. And some of the fields that were important for searching are completely irrelevant once you get into actually reviewing the opportunity and vice versa. So this is where the duties start to actually matter. What is the work going to be like? Interaction level, clients, benefits, training, what are they getting out of it? So what is the value for the potential volunteer out of that opportunity? So those fields start to become important. The location and transportation fields, is it in my area, something I can do from home? Can I access this opportunity in a reasonable way? Time and budget fields are going to be dates and times, start end date, minimum hours, commitment length, application date, and cost. If those apply, they should be filled out. They do not apply to all opportunities, which is fine. So they don't have to be filled out. But obviously, if there is a restriction, it's important that that information be available because you don't want to waste the potential opportunity's time in order, if they don't, if they're never going to be able to meet the commitment length or the minimum number of hours and that's not specified, it's a complete waste of their time to apply and realize that it's unsuitable. So they're not required per se, but filling them out if they are a real restriction is important. And lastly are the qualification checks. So this is not about their interests, but about whether they are suitable for the position. So does it meet any special needs they have? That would be the suitability field. Does it require a police check, which disqualifies obviously a certain proportion of potential volunteers? And do they have the skills and experience that are desired for the position? So again, it's not so much in searching for something that interests them, but once they reach the position, it's important for them to understand whether they are appropriate for the position, rather than is the position appropriate for them. So all of these come down not so much to are they complete or are they using a particular formula, but do they attract the volunteer? So any of the content in these fields, the more they're filled out and the better the style and quality of how they are filled out, the more likely they are to attract a potential volunteer. So these are the fields that you promote to your posting agencies, not so much for ensuring that people find their opportunity, but for ensuring that they get applications. Because if these aren't filled out effectively, then the quality of applications they get will be low. They'll either get applications from people who are unsuitable for the position, or they will not be attractive to a potential volunteer, and therefore they won't get applications at all. Any questions about those? This is not all the fields, so what about the rest? So the rest are really optional. The reality is the rest of them are, you need to decide, are those important? Because they're not necessarily key fields for someone making a decision about applying for the opportunity. They're not fields that are used for searching. So do you need to maintain that information? And that is a question that's internal to your organization. But if you're thinking about how do I focus my time as a data manager and the time and effort of my posting agencies, fields that I haven't listed here should be viewed with some suspicion, because they may not be giving you enough value to justify collecting that information, and that's up to you. But if you're trying to focus the effort of both your data managers and your posting agencies on providing good quality data, focusing on these fields and the searching fields are going to give you the highest value versus many of the other fields that are available, which could be useful, but they're not a huge value, like seasons. Yeah, I mean, I could go through the whole list, but there are potentially a number of fields that are not what I would call high-value fields. And so additional requirements, great. More info, URL, great. They can provide additional information, but when you're evaluating overall, does this help someone find the position, or does it help them make a decision about whether they want to apply? Some of these are lower on the list in terms of value. So there's not much left, but it's just something to consider when you're trying to focus down on the number of fields you keep. Identifying the ones that provide the biggest bang for your buck in terms of decision making or finding the opportunity is going to give you the best results. So now let's actually try some searches and see how you go about evaluating the data that you've already got. So one of the first ones that I'm going to show you is how to find fields that are too long. We can also do this search for fields that are too short. So duties is a really important decision-making field for the potential volunteer, because it tells them what on earth they're going to be doing and what the opportunity is. So if it's too short, then it potentially is not going to be attractive. There's not enough marketing in that position for that to be useful for attracting a volunteer. If it's too long, the chances are it should be broken up into multiple opportunities, or the person posting has gone way, way overboard in terms of how much data they're putting in. And one of the negative effects of that, if I can find one on here, do a what's new. Do all what's new. Is that if you have a position, these are all good, so hey. So let's take this one and imagine that I have seen positions that have posted 3 or 4 times as much information as this in the duties. It does a disservice to everyone else who's posted an opportunity to allow one posting agency to have a 3-page long list of duties. And in the search results, that then dominates the entire search results and takes up the whole page. So keeping duties tight and sensible is going to give a better result for the person looking for opportunities, and is fairer in terms of not allowing one agency to dominate the search results with their content. So the way that we do a search for the length of the duty field and the length of pretty much any field is through a search. Someone have a question?
I'm just on the on a webinar right now. So.
Can you mute yourself? Okay, I'm going to mute. There we go. Okay. So we're going to use SQL. So this is only available to people who've had SQL enabled in their user type. So if you don't see this, you need to talk to whoever the super user is in your database to get access to it. Duties field is called duties, amazingly. So I'm saying the length of the duties field is greater than, say, 2,000 characters. So there's two pretty, there's a novella. Here's an example of an incredibly long duties. So what do you do if someone provides you with excellent content for the duties field, but it's just insanely huge? So that's where having an extra field for more information on the opportunity, or using the additional requirements field, or something other than the duties field to put some of this information in, is going to allow you to have, a nice tight search result that's fair and concise, but still capture all the information that the posting agency wants to give. So it's not that you necessarily have to ban them from providing all this information. It's great that they want to, but having it all in the duties can have a negative impact. So moving some of that, or deciding that there's too much because they're trying to post about 5 different opportunities in the same posting, breaking that up by copying the record, breaking it up into multiple postings is going to be more effective, both for the person trying to find the opportunity and in terms of fairness in the results. So let's do a different check here. Let's find ones that are really small. So let's find ones that have less than 200 characters. So here's some that are incredibly brief. And that may be okay, but it may mean that there isn't enough information to attract anyone to that position. So this is going to be case by case, and also depend on how much involvement you have with your posting agencies and how much you handhold them with their positions. But it may be worth identifying, like, this is too brief. For example, slide volunteer, what slide? This is not effective. So this is an example of one where this agency needs to be approached to provide more information than assist sliders on and off the slide. This is inadequate. So it may be a lot of these are completely fine, but using checks like this to find instances where that agency is not doing themselves a service by only providing that much information, you can follow up if you want to go to that degree. If you want to find ones that are blank, there's 2 ways to do that. From here, I can say is null, or I can actually use these drop downs and just find duties and say is null. Okay, duties is null. So same search. This is going to find ones that have no duties at all. So this needs to be fixed. Having no duties at all is not effective. This is not going to get anyone to apply if there's no duties or information about what the position is for. So these are ones where follow-up is required, for sure. And you can do that with any of the fields. So I can say if I want to have benefits for every single record and I want to see who hasn't done that, I can look for benefits is null and bring up all the cases where no one has provided any information about benefits. I could then send an email out to all of these, an update request saying, we noticed that you haven't provided any information about the benefits of your volunteer opportunity. We encourage you to provide, XYZ information. Here's our guide on how to do a good quality opportunity, and try and get them to come in and actually provide that information. Okay, so that doing me isn't filled out thing only works for text fields. It doesn't work for classifications like the location, the areas of interest, the commitment length, and so on, because notes are not good enough for searching on those. So how do we search for those? Those are checklist fields. So again, from our advanced search form, we're going to go to checklist at the bottom. I'm going to pick areas of interest, add. I'm going to pick has none. Okay, and I can do the same with any of these. But for now, I'm just going to do the areas of interest has none, search. So I have 32 positions that don't have an area of interest, not even one. Nobody's going to find those opportunities. So with areas of interest in particular, you can change your display options with select checkbox, which I'm going to do now, and add it at once. So I could go through and say, well, this one and this one and this one are the same category. Do add, remove area of interest and add them in bulk, so I don't have to go individually into the record to do it. But they should all have areas of interest. So this is a way for you to identify ones that are not filled out correctly, and then you can one by one go in and assign some or assign them in bulk from the search results. And it works the same for the other kinds of classifications, location, suitable for, and so on. If you want to find all the ones that are classified as anyone or not classified as anyone. So missing is another way to do it. So let's say I want to do, here's an example. So I'll say does not have animals as an area of interest, but has any of the terms dog, cat, animal, bird, hog, horse, and whatever. So here are 10 positions that mention animals but do not have a classification of animals. So this is where that high focus comes in, where, for instance, if food nutrition is one of the most picked things that people want to volunteer with, you can say, do this search that I just did, clear form there. I'm going to do areas of interest. I'm going to say exclude ones with food nutrition, but I'm going to look here for any of the terms food, meal, eat. Oops, I didn't do that right. Any of the terms. I have 26. So 26 instances that seem to reference something to do with eating that are not classified under that category. So this is how you go back and repair any of the positions that are not classified correctly. You pick a category that's a high value category. You look for ones that don't have it but have some keywords that would imply that they have something to do with that category. Then you can review the information, check off the ones where you want to apply the area of interest, do add, remove area of interest, and then you'll just check off food, or this is, so just hit submit here because it'll then take you to all the general areas of interest and you can do it from there. This would actually be under basic needs. And then I could pick add food services nutrition. I'm not going to do it because this is someone's real database, but that's how it's done. Okay? All right. So we sort of covered this one, the more or less than a certain number of classifications. They're actually really fancy ways to do has less than 2, has more than 3. If you want to do that, get in touch with me because I can give you SQL to paste into that little box that'll tell you, for instance, find me all of the positions that have 10 or more areas of interest or 15 or more communities. All of that is possible to do. So if you're trying to do a search on something like that to see how your data is being classified or if there's any problems with your data, those searches are possible. So ask for what you want, and I will give you the SQL to paste in that little box to find that. We just did the deep dive on a specific area of interest, so that's where you look for ones that are missing a particular category but have keywords in them that imply that they likely belong to that category, and that's how you can ensure good coverage of important categories. I talked a little bit earlier about dates and the importance of dates. So let's do a little bit of an experimentation with date searches. So date searches have their own drop-downs here. These are all the different kinds of dates available in the software. The important ones are going to be application deadline. There is 0 point in continuing to post a position that says the application deadline was 3 months ago. No one's going to want to apply, and anyone who does apply is questionable because they didn't bother to read the opportunity to say the application deadline had passed. So what you can do is something like application deadline date is in past. This gives you a chance to send these, so 25. This gives you a chance to send these records out for review by the posting agency to see if there's a new application deadline or whether those opportunities should be taken down. You can do a review of the update date or the created date to see whether that record needs a refresh or a repost. The request date is also an important one, and so is display until. So date of request appears next to the opportunity in search results. So I'm going to say date of request is before February 1st, 2014. Really old, 2-year plus. So I have 105 where the request date was at least 2 years ago. And the challenge of this is this. This looks terrible to a potential volunteer to be looking at search results and see a request date from 2013. Now this may still be an applicable opportunity, but if you don't change the request date, someone's going to look at that and go, what is this? Why is this 2-year-old plus position in this list? And they're just going to skip it. So either take the request date out after it's been a certain amount of time if you don't have the ability to verify. Take the opportunity down if it clearly should be. Get an update from that agency to ensure they still want it, and if they renew their interest, put a new request date in. Change the request date to today. That's going to pop it up in the search results and give them a boost, and it's going to mean that the volunteers reviewing the list are not going to go, why on earth is there a position from 2013 showing up in my results, and just assume that that position is no longer valid. So there's plenty of these that need to be reviewed. So if the end date or the start date are past, same problem. So if the end date of the position is in the past, no one is going to want to apply for that position. 34 records. So either the end date is wrong and they misinterpreted what end date meant, because end date means the whole opportunity is over, or this is an expired opportunity, it needs to go. So in these cases, this is fine. I didn't exclude expired opportunities. These are good. So this is good data management here. These are expired. Excellent. This one isn't. This one is passed, but it hasn't expired, and the end date is over. So this position needs to come down. So a lot of these are expired. So good on Central East. They've got a lot of these expired and properly maintained. That's great. The few that aren't, though, those need attention. Okay, looking for duplication. There's a few different ways you can look for duplication, but generally speaking, duplication means you've got multiple postings for the same agency. And the best way to look for that is to do a browse by organization and look for something other than number 1. So anywhere where you see more than one posting, have a quick look. Are these all separate? They are. You're good. It's that simple. But it's more common than you might think that you get multiple of exactly the same posting accidentally because someone resubmits and they didn't realize they had an existing one, and the data manager didn't notice that it was existing or it was expired or something, and so they don't realize they've got multiple listings. But it's worth a quick scan every once in a while just to review any of the organizations that have multiple postings. You also want to look for the program versus agency problem that I talked about earlier. So if you have a whole bunch of programs at the same agency, there's a consequence to listing those separately. So you have to be very sure that you want them to not come up together. So by posting them under their program, then whenever someone clicks, this is Canadian Mental Health Association, for example, in Simcoe County branch. These are all the same branch. If I go into this position and I click other opportunities from this agency, I only get one, except that there's actually a ton of opportunities from the Simcoe branch, and I can't see them. So it may be that that's intentional because you only want it to show up under the Orillia Satellite Office, and that's okay. But there is some negative to not allowing all of that organization's opportunities to appear together because you've listed them under all of the small individual programs. That's a judgment call, but it's worth reviewing by going into your list of organizations and figuring out what makes sense. So here's a really good example. You've got 4 different records. 2 of them are listed just under the branch, and the other 3 are listed under programs at that branch. But that means, again, that if I'm in one of these, I'm not going to see the others if I go to look for other opportunities from that agency. So there's a negative consequence to someone looking for similar positions by not having them all listed under the same one. You can move them. So you can go into edit. If I choose to move all of these over, I can go into edit those positions, change the record they're anchored to all go to the same place, and they'll be good. Okay, so I've started to give you a hint of this next section, which is using your search results to evaluate style and consistency. So if you are not familiar with how to use change display options, this is a critical tool for making sure that you have consistent, professional-looking information in your database. So change display options allows you to show any field that you want in the database. If you've got table format on, you instantly can add any field in your database to your display. If you don't have table format on, this is use table format, then you're going to get this fixed result, and you can't add additional fields beyond what you see here. So you get the organization, the duties, community balls, and the request date and the name. That's it. You can't add anything else. If you turn table format on, you instantly are able to add a ton of additional fields, as many as you want. You can also change the sort order, whatever works for you. So I'll reload my results with tables display on. So this allows you to compare information and do an overall review of your data. One of the best tools is to sort to look for inconsistencies. So I can sort by organization name and look for inconsistencies there. I can sort by duties and look for similar but slightly different things. There's many different ways that you can review your data. You can sort by the date fields to look for old or problem date fields without having to individually search each one. You can just change your sort of your results to have a look that way instead of executing many different searches. So using the change display options as a tool to look for weirdness can be very effective. So one of the things you can do against a nice big change display table is running spell checkers and other things on your page. So you can do this by saving your page, opening it up in Word or Excel or somewhere else and running a spell check on it. So for example, I could take this page I just brought up. I can do save page as, open it up in Excel or Word, and run a spell checker on it and look for issues with the spelling of my content all in one go instead of having to go individually into each record to look for problems. So there's lots of tools like that that you can use against all of your data at once to see if there's any consistency or sort of general style things that you can do to improve the look and the quality of your information. Having a style guide, if you don't have one, is really, really, really important. And one of the things that I see a lot in people's data is the use of generic volunteer position titles, such as volunteer, helper, various positions. That's actually a title of the position, various positions, or various, just the word various. Anything like that that's completely unhelpful to the potential volunteer to know what that is about. Don't be shy about editing the position title that's submitted to you if someone submits you something that says volunteer. That isn't doing them any service by leaving it saying volunteer. You may want to have a list of banned names that you don't allow, like volunteer or various. And then you can point to your policy saying that's not an appropriate title for your position. On the support portal, there's a really detailed set of instructions for running link checkers against your site if you want to make sure if people submitted more information, links, and other things that they work. Or if you've posted images in your descriptions or anything like that and you want to make sure that it all functions, you can follow the instructions at the support portal for doing link checking on your site. There's also a general site spell checker you can use that I've linked here. I'll be posting this presentation up for download later. I'm going to try and wrap it up shortly. Sorry, it's going on so long. So configuring searches, I talked a little bit about how important it was to not turn on searches that didn't have good quality data. So see if I can find one that find a good victim here. So let's say I pick women. Positions suitable for women. I got none. I guarantee you 100% that there are many, many positions in this database that are suitable for women. Probably 95% plus of them are suitable for women. But because the data isn't filled out, the search returns nothing. So this looks poorly on you, but it also, if you have some of it filled out for some records, is going to mean that people are going to miss out on opportunities that they shouldn't be. So what do? There's a few options. If there's a suitable for you don't want, for example, go into the setup and hide it or delete it. Just get rid of it. Don't allow it to be part of your search form if you're not using it, because it's not doing you any favors. Take the suitable for right off your form in the view setup until you feel confident that the data in your records warrants having a search for that, right? It's a great search if the data behind it is going to give you effective results, but if it's not, it's better to take it away until you're ready. And the same holds true for commitment length or any of those things. If it's not filled out, this is not a benefit. So turn it off until you're ready and have a goal saying by, 2 months from now, we are going to have all our
Muted.
Somehow all of you got muted. I don't know how. So, sorry, that distracted me. So just take it off until you're ready. Have a goal, update your opportunities, follow up with your posting agencies to make sure that the particular field gets filled out effectively, but don't turn it on your setup until you're ready, because it's not doing anyone any favors. So custom searches, once you have good quality data behind it, you're not confined to the searches that are sort of canned CIOC searches. Any search you can do in advanced search pretty much, except add SQL, you can bookmark and add to your main site. So I'm sorry, Halton, I'm going to use you as a guinea pig here. So for example, Halton has bookmarked some of their searches that I think they think are frequently looked for. These are some of the suitability searches, for example, and you can add those anywhere in your menu, on your website, anywhere you want to. So don't feel constrained by just the search options that are available to you built in, anything you can do in advanced search or any kind of combination of multiple different kinds of searches. So if you wanted court-ordered service hours in Halton region, you can run that search, copy a link, put it in your menu, put it on a website, do whatever you want to do with it. So once your data is of a quality where you're going to get good results, you can start to leverage that to build all new kinds of searches for yourself to give effective results to the community. Okay, so I have one more thing I'm going to cover that I know some of you may not be able to stay for. It's kind of an add-on I decided to do at the last minute. So I'll give you my parting note first, and anyone who wants to stay can. So I mentioned earlier you should have a posting guide. Everyone should have a style guide or posting guide that gives information about all of the kinds of things I've just discussed with you today in plain language. Which fields are important for searching, which fields are important for making a choice, so that the person who wants to post their opportunity can do a good job of providing information about their position. So if you don't already have a posting guide, make sure you create one, link to it prominently on your suggest an opportunity and update form and on your website and anywhere else you can to make sure that people know how to design their position to get effective results and have people find that position. If you haven't already filled out field help for your form, do that. And keep in mind that the same field help is used for staff and public, so don't put information in there that is not ready for the public. It's exactly the same information for both staff and public, so it has to work for both. If you word it just for staff, that's a mistake. I talked a bit earlier about removing low-value fields. So if you feel like you're trying to collect too much information from your posting agencies, identify low-value ones and either take them off your form or in your posting guide say, you know, these fields are a bonus, but don't worry about filling them out. If you're trying to be brief, these ones can be omitted so that they know which ones matter. We also talked about the required fields a little, very briefly. So in your field setup, you can actually set certain fields as required. They will be marked with a red asterisk on the form, indicating that they are a required field. We do not enforce required fields for the public. You can turn on enforcement for staff in your agency setup if you want to, though I generally don't recommend enforcement. Warning, yes, not enforcement, because very few fields are truly required. Community, areas of interest, some certain basic ones, yes, but in many cases, you can't say that that would be applicable to 100% of records. So marking it required is great because it makes it clear this is an important field. Forcing it to be required is kind of another step that can cause some challenges. If you get a brand new request that's half empty, as soon as you create that record, the same day, send an update request back out again. And in that update request, say you need to fill out X, Y, Z and get it corrected as soon as possible. That's because while it's in what's new and when it goes out to notify people who've signed up to be notified of new positions, you want it to be complete then. So if you don't get that opportunity fixed as soon as possible, you're missing your best opportunity to advertise that position to people. So don't wait. Don't create the opportunity if you don't think you can do that right away. So get in touch with that person, wait for them to respond before you do it if you want to, but don't let it linger in between creating the posting and making sure that it's up to snuff and has everything filled out that it needs. So before I talk about the community set stuff, does anyone have any questions about the general content that I've covered today? Everyone's muted, so you'll have to unmute yourself if you want to talk, or I'll monitor the chat. Okay, so I'm going to, can we set up a required field? So I'll show where the required field setup is. And again, it's not enforced in the way you might think, but you can mark them that way. So we'll go to trying to behave as though I'm in Firefox. There we go. It needs to be, I'll do it from here. So if you're in the Ontario database, you're using a shared database, and that brings in a slight new challenge. You'll have to contact me to make a field required, because field display is shared across everybody in the same Ontario database. If you're in your own database, then you have access to the setup area and you can do whatever you like. So there's in the field display area under required, there are checkboxes next to the fields that you want to make required. As soon as you check those off, then in the update form and the feedback form, they get a little red asterisk. If you hover over it, it says required. There's a legend that says that the red asterisk is required. And so that's how you make it required. So if you're in your own database, go to field display. This is where you set it. If you're in the Ontario database and you would like to see something be set as required, then you can contact me. And as long as it's a reasonable request, then I will do so. I'm really trying to encourage all of the critical searching fields to be marked required. So I think I've done that for a number of them, and I'm happy to go and add more to the required list. It will not actually force people to fill it out. So it's not a concern that one person will want it required and therefore you know, other people will not be able to get it filled out. If you don't have it on your form at all, then there's no enforcement. So if you don't use a field, it's not going to tell you a field is required that you're not even using. So that's not a concern if you're in a shared database. But I'm happy to, you have to contact me though in the Ontario database, because I'm managing that setup for the field display and the requirements in the Ontario database, because you're all sharing the same setup. Okay, and I've got 2 different requests for minimum age being required. So clearly that's something that needs to be addressed. Okay, so I'm going to talk now about something called community sets. And Central East, I'm so glad you volunteered, because you have a ton of community sets. So you're excellent examples of community sets. So what on earth is a community set? If you have a small database and only one view for the public and staff, you probably never touched this, and that's fine. Community sets, they both control the list of communities that are available on a step-by-step search in certain drop-downs and search forms, but they do more than that. A community set also selects which records are available in any view that uses that set. In your database, you can have as many of those sets as you want, and they might be for different geographic partners. So in Central East, it's most frequently used on a geographic basis, so that Aurelia can have a portal, and Bruce Gray can have a portal, and Huron can have a portal, and every sort of geographic region can have its own little separate listing, and they share some opportunities between them because some apply to multiple areas, but they also have an ability to isolate them and not show the entire region at once in every view. But there are other ways that you can use it as well. For example, in Niagara, they have 2 volunteer portals, and one is a regular volunteer portal, and the other is a donation portal. So rather than posting volunteer opportunities, it posts donation opportunities. And they keep those 2 sets separate using community sets. So they have their Find a Volunteer Opportunity site, which is volunteer postings, and then they have their Donation of Goods, which is only donation opportunities. So these are in the same database, and they're kept separate through the use of volunteer or community sets for volunteer. So that's why you would care. Once you start using community sets, you're making a commitment to maintaining them. So it becomes important to start paying attention about where different opportunities go as soon as there's more than one option. If you only have one community set, then every opportunity you make obviously goes right into the one set you have because you only have one. But if you have multiple, then you have to start paying attention. Does it go in this portal? Does it go in that portal? Does it go in both? It starts to matter. Let's have a quick look at community sets. Volunteer communities. So let's look at sets essentially to begin with. So as I said, theirs are very much geographically based. So for each of the sets that they've created, they're named based on the geography that they're doing. The name is internal only, so I could name it dogs and cats and it wouldn't matter. The area served matters though. The area served is what shows up when you have a volunteer portal that says looking for opportunities in Halton region, this is the area served. If you have it blank, it would just say looking for volunteer opportunities. So you can repeat that. I could have 5 different portals all in the same region that might all say Halton region, but they have different content, and that's fine. And you can actually customize it to the point of looking for seniors opportunities in Halton region. That's all customizable, and the view setup and so on. So, but this area served, that's where that comes into play. Okay. So once you've created a set, and it's as simple as you give it a name for internal use, you say the area, the geographic area it serves in general, you add it, you're done. You've created a set. As soon as you have more than one, you start to have a choice about assigning records and views to community sets. Every view can only have one set. So every single view in your database is assigned to exactly one community set, no mixing. But opportunities can belong to multiple sets. So I can have the volunteer connection for the whole of Central East Ontario, and that would be one set. And then I can assign individually in those. Some of them go only to Muskoka, only to Parry Sound, only to Perth and Huron. So here, for example, this is the community set with all the regions. So all the opportunities should be in there, 989. But within that, there are smaller regional sites that have far fewer opportunities because only some of those opportunities are assigned to these other portals, these other community sets. Once you've created that, you have to do a one-time setup of the groups and group members. So what are groups and group members? If I go into a step-by-step search, your group is the thing with the ball. So at all of these little community-colored balls that you see in your legend of which opportunities are assigned to which communities, that's your group. And each group can have one or more actual communities associated with it. So in this case, Burlington is associated with just one community, Burlington. Halton Hills is broken down further into Acton and Georgetown. So if I pick, I'll pick Simcoe County here. Here are the groups that were set up, so Barrie, Clearview, Collingwood, and so on. Okay, and that's where you assign all the colors of balls. And then in the group members, I can pick as many communities as I want. So these are the specific communities and assign them to a group. You can see the same group is appearing multiple times here. In this case, in the case of Halton, I would have had Halton Hills, would have had Acton and, no, it was Acton and Georgetown, both assigned to the group Halton Hills. You can, if I do a portal, say the donation portal that we just looked at, I might have exactly the same community set up for both. So it's not that they have to be different geographically, they can be exactly the same, because maybe the reason you have two sets is because one is a seniors portal and one is a general, or one is a youth portal and one is, you know, something else. So there may be other reasons other than geography for setting them up, but they each need their geography set up. Then we get into actually making sure that the right opportunities are in the right place. So this is the reason I brought it into this session is if you have multiple community sets and you're not doing community set management, people aren't finding the opportunities that they need. So using the community set management tools, you can review where things are assigned and move them around. So let's say I want to make sure that Aurelia has everything it needs. I'll click Edit. I can optionally pick something from another set to review. In this case, I don't really care. I'm going to say I want to find anything that serves Aurelia, that find opportunities to add. So anything that's not in my Aurelia set that serves Aurelia. And I found 60. There are 60 postings that serve Aurelia that are not currently in the Aurelia set. And that means that if someone goes to that Aurelia portal, they're missing out on all these opportunities. And there might be duplication that was accidentally made because of it. So if I'm going to go through and add all of these to Aurelia, for example, I would then want to make sure that everything that I just added wasn't actually a duplication of something that already existed. So that's when I would want to go back to reviewing by organization and making sure that I didn't have double postings. And if so, you would pick one of them, make sure they're in both portals, and you're done. So you can do the same thing with removing postings. So this tool allows you to add or remove. It's showing all the communities that have been set up for any of the portals in the database. So that's why there's so many here, because this is a really large geographic service region with many small communities. So in this case, there's just a ton of them that have been set up in all of the various community sets. From individual records, I'll just randomly bring one up. As soon as you have, doesn't matter what I bring up here, as soon as you have multiple community sets, then when you go to update a record, you get this section at the top of your form. Gives you an opportunity to make sure that this record appears in every portal it needs to show up in. It will automatically be assigned to the portal or the community set I'm working in right now. So the view that I'm in right now is this one with the star. I don't know, hopefully you can see this little star. That means that's the community set of the view I'm working in. I can't take it out of that one. It's auto-assigned to that. And then I can also assign it to any additional ones that I want to, or take them out. But I cannot take it out of this one, and that's to keep you from losing opportunities by accident into the void. If you do lose an opportunity into the void, I don't know if there's going to be any in here. I didn't notice, but let's have a look and see. If you lose an opportunity into the void, there will be a notice on this page. Now, obviously, Central East has been keeping on top of this because they don't have any notice saying that there's orphaned opportunities. But if you did, if you unassigned an opportunity from every set and it didn't appear anywhere, you would be able to tell that from here. It would warn you. So you will not run into that without knowing it because you would have a warning from this page. If you decide to run multiple portals, either from geography or some other reason, you need to regularly visit this page and understand if everything is assigned where it should be, because otherwise you're going to potentially be missing out on a lot of things that you shouldn't be. You can also add and remove opportunities from your search results. So let's say that it wasn't geography-based, there was a youth portal that you were running, and you wanted to be able to bring up all of the opportunities that were youth. So I can say, show me all of the ones for age 10. Doesn't matter here what I pick. And then I can check all, and I can should be able to add remove to community set. Can I not? Oh, I thought I could. I'll have to add that. So there should be a way to add and remove from a community set from here so you can do it all in one go instead of having to go individually into those records. You can do, I believe, I can also give you SQL to find records not in a set. So if you're trying to do some kind of complicated search and find ones that are missing and the community set management tool doesn't do it for you, I can give you searches that will find it for you. Are there any questions about community sets? If you've never heard of them before, that may have been an overwhelming amount of information, but at least you know that it's possible. And any general questions that you've thought about data quality and searching? Okay, there's a question about the cost field. So this is an interesting question. So this is whether or not the cost field should mention the police check or TB test costs, or if it's self-explanatory, if police check is checked off. I would say that's a style guide issue, but that you have to figure out yourself. But I would say that it should mention it as a cost, because I know that I've been in positions where I had to do a TB check or vaccination, and it was paid for me. And so I wouldn't necessarily assume that I was responsible for the cost if it didn't explicitly say so. So I would say assume that no one assumes and put it explicitly. If that person needs to pay for their own police check or pay for their own TB test, and that's not something they're going to receive compensation for, it's a good idea to mention it. Even if you mention volunteer may be responsible for, that gets you out of, if you don't have that information, you could still post it in the cost saying that it's possible that they will be responsible for the cost. That's a reasonable explanation for that one. If you have teenagers especially who might not have the cash to be paying for even small expenses in order to meet their opportunity requirements, it's really important to give them that cost information if it's available. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up because this went really long. My apologies. I ended up wanting to put more in when I started developing the presentation than I had originally intended. So if you have any follow-up questions, send me a message, go to the support portal, whatever you like. I will be posting this recording and the slides that went along with it for your reference.